Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is going to be my first ever podcast episode, and I'm extremely excited to share today what I'm currently working on, what I've recently finished, and then what projects I have planned in the future, which might also include some recent yarn that I've acquired. If this is your first time watching my channel, thank you so much for joining. This is only my second time posting on YouTube, and I'm really excited to start getting the podcast going. I love watching these so much, so I'm really excited to post my own content and talk more frequently about what I'm working on because I love talking about knitting with my friends and family. So I'm really excited to share it here on YouTube. The goal of my channel is to share as many outdoor inspired or made for the outdoors knits as possible. I love spending time outdoors. I live in the Southwest and it's so beautiful out here, so I try to be out as much as I can, even though it is quite literally 100 degrees today where I live. So I'm sweating a little bit. I'm struggling trying to film this video today, but hopefully we make it through the whole podcast episode, and let's get started. So before I go into projects I've recently finished, I wanted to talk about what I'm wearing. This is the Vilma vest by Gregoria Fibers. I knit this probably over a year ago now, but I'm really loving how it turned out. I think she now has a cardigan and a sweater design based off of this eyelet motif. I honestly think she was one of the first people that started the kind of eyelet trend that's really been blowing up this year that I'm loving personally. But I made this vest using just 100% wool. I believe it was yarn from Universal Yarns. And yeah, I held it single, no mohair or anything like that. And it is quite warm. I am, like I mentioned, sweating wearing this today, but I really enjoy the color. I think the purple is really pretty, and it was such an easy project to work up. This was actually my first time when I properly knit like eyelet lace designs, and it was definitely a learning curve, but I thought this was a perfect project to do it on. I can stand up a little so you can see the full thing, but it has this beautiful eyelet at the bottom. And so actually when you make this pattern, you start right here at this little wave design right above it, and you knit the whole body up to the armhole. And then from there, you'll split for the back panel and then the front and the right panel, since it is a cardigan. And you'll knit up to the top from there. You join with a Kitchener stitch up at the shoulders to join the front and the back pieces. And then you go back in later and add all of the rib details. There's some ribbing around the arms as well. And then you pick up from your provisional cast on. I can't remember if I mentioned that, but you start with a provisional cast on because you eventually go back and knit that bottom lace portion from the top down to the bottom where you bind off. So a little bit of an interesting, I believe, technique for how to construct this vest, but Sure Pattern is really good. She explains it all very well. So I don't think even a beginner would have trouble following this, as I was a pretty recent beginner when I knit this myself, but it's such a cute pattern. I haven't worn it in a while, but I'm definitely going to be getting this out because I really love how this looks on. So now moving into finished objects, I feel like I've been in a bit of a knit limbo recently where I have a lot of things that I'm working on, but I'm struggling to finish any of those things. And so I only have one thing to share that I've really finished within the past month. And it is the Sadie sweater by Ozetta. Excuse all the creases that are in it, but this is what my finished one turned out looking like. I knit this using Drops Bell, which was new to me to knit with this summer, but I'm really liking this yarn a lot. The content is 53% cotton, 33% viscose, and 14% linen. So it's obviously a summer fiber, but it's very breathable. I really enjoy how this is around a DK weight, so you can actually just hold this single and make summer tops, or I opted for a summer sweater because I wanted something that was like full coverage, like a full sweater, but I wanted it in a fiber other than wool so that it would just feel a little bit more lightweight, that I could wear it on like summer evenings if it got a little colder. The way this sweater is constructed is you actually start in the back and you do a bunch of short rows to get the back collar a little bit lifted. From there, you work your back panel, and then you pick up at both shoulders, one at a time, of course, and you knit down until you get enough length that you join in the middle here underneath the collar in the front. Then from there, you finish the front panel. And then, like most sweaters that are knit from the top down, you'll join the front and the back underneath the arms and then work in the round. From there, you can go back and pick the sleeves, which there were actually a little bit of short rows at the top of the sleeves, which I liked. I think it gives the sleeves a really good shape over the shoulders, and I think it's very smart to add that into this pattern. As you can kind of see here, the sleeves have some decreases, so they're not like a straight sleeve. By the time I got to the end, it was pretty hard to be knitting this on circular needles. I opted for the magic loop method, and I was a little nervous. I seem to have troubles with that method in terms of there being a gap in the back right whenever you like pull through and switch over to starting a new round. But it did block out, so I'm quite happy with how it turned out, though it was definitely still really tricky once I got down here. I used the surprisingly stretchy bind off for this, which I typically go for whenever I'm knitting something in stockinette. I actually usually opt for doing that bind off with a crochet hook because I've crocheted for many, many years prior to learning how to knit, so that comes very easily to me. I find that the fit of the sweater is really nice. I followed everything to measurement, so like the length of the body is what is said in the pattern, and it comes out like very slightly cropped, but not too cropped by any means, and definitely not too long. I did not want like a summer sweater to be too long, so I thought that the length of this actually ended up being really nice. This sweater was also my test case for blocking a yarn other than wool. Honestly, if I'm knitting with cotton or linen or even silk, sometimes I don't block the finished piece because I don't necessarily all the time see the worth in doing that. But I did on this sweater because I really wanted to see what the drape would be like. I find when I knit sweaters before doing your final blocking, mine get so like bunched up and they look very stiff. And so I usually rely on blocking for getting a really nice drape and shape to the piece. This piece looked really nice before I blocked it, but I think after I blocked it, it got even more drape and it grew a little bit around the shoulders and the underarms. So just made more of a relaxed fit, and I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I'm really excited to talk about my whips today because I'm really into working on all three of them, but I'm not being a monogamous knitter about it at all, and I'm really like working between all three of these all at once. So the progress overall is slow. I feel like I'm going to have three finished objects right around the same time. The first whip I'm going to talk about today is actually my longest standing whip. I think I started this, gosh, probably back in January. And then it got way too hot where I live for me to want to work on this. So it got kind of put on the back burner. And I'm really trying to like focus on it a lot more now because I'd love to see it finished. And I'd also love to have the cord that the needles are on back because I'm stuck on casting on something else new until I get a set of cords back. So that's honestly my hidden motive there. But enough of the intro on that one. My whip is the Roomy raglan. This is quite a popular pattern right now, and it was in the winter especially, and for really good reason. It is such a cute sweater. The Roomy raglan is a pattern by Jules Efterfield. She actually has a free version, which is the one that I'm using because after reading the description, I found that her and I have similar body measurements and it looks so good on her. So I'm actually just working up the free version, which is only one size, but she has a paid graded version out now, and I even believe she has a Roomy raglan light pattern now. So if you don't want it to be as bulky as the original Roomy raglan pattern, you can choose to buy that one as well. So all of that said, her pattern is beautiful. I believe it came into popularity because it looks similar to Baba sweaters, and this is kind of a dupe for their raglan version. But a little bit about the sweater is that obviously, like I've mentioned a few times, it's a raglan, as is in the name. It has these really nice short rows in the back though, so you get a little bit of a raised collar, and you actually start at the top of the collar, which I don't normally do, but it was such a nice surprise because you actually get the whole collar piece done. You don't have to go back and do it later. And she recommends you start with like just your main color yarn, which I did here, which is this darker green wool, and then you add in your accent colors. Once you finish the collar is actually then when the short rows are worked. From there, it's just a normal raglan pattern, as you can see here. And I've gotten to the point where I have actually split for sleeves and I'm just barely working on the body. So all I have to do is continue working in the round on this sweater. And then there's some ribbing at the bottom, and then I'll go back and finish the sleeves, which are a little bit of a cropped sleeve for a sweater, which I think is going to turn out being really cute. I did mention that this is quite warm, and that's because this sweater is made with a bulky weight yarn or a combination of yarns to get a bulky weight yarn. You knit this on 6.5mm needles, and the gauge looks to be 14 stitches by 22 rows. So this does work up really, really fast, which I think will be a great motivator for me to get back to working on this. I held 3 balls of yarn actually in my Roomy raglan pattern. The first base yarn is this yarn by Mandala. It's a Biolana yarn. It looks like it's Italian yarn. 100% organic wool and color. It looks like it's just a number, but 282. It's this beautiful like apple green. It's really chunky wool yarn. For it being organic wool, it is actually really soft and really like plushy. So it's working up really nicely in my sweater despite it being bulky. I don't think my sweater is going to end up being too heavy. I think, again, I rely on blocking a lot. That might be a common theme here, but I think it's going to end up turning out to be very loose and drapey, where right now it's a little bit stiff with using this thick of a wool yarn. To get kind of some like accent colors involved into this base green, I'm using Barocco Remix Light, which is such a fun yarn. I really hope to use this a lot more in the future because the the base green color with those yellow and white flecks are so pretty. And I think it pairs really well with these two yarns here. Remix Light, if you're not familiar with it, actually uses a lot of, or not a lot, it uses 100% recycled fibers. It looks like it's 30% nylon, 27% cotton, 24% acrylic, 10% silk, and 9% linen. So quite a lot goes in here, and I'm sure some of that makes up these little specks that you see in here, but it's a really pretty yarn. I think by itself, it's close to a fingering weight, maybe a little bit heavier, but held with this yarn, I meet the bulky gauge that I needed for the Roomy raglan sweater. And just for fun, because I saw this yarn in a store in Minneapolis and thought it would be perfect for what I was envisioning for my green Roomy raglan, I'm adding in a strand of Berlino by Lana Grossa. It is this really pretty green that matches very well with the greens I have going on here, but it also has some gold like tinsel woven in throughout. This yarn is 83% viscose and 17% metallic fiber, which makes up the shine of this. But this just adds the tiniest bit of sparkle into my Roomy raglan, as you can kind of see here. And I think if I wear this like outside in the sun, obviously in the winter, not the summer, but outside in the sun, it's going to be really sparkly and it's going to be like such a cute sweater. So that's my Roomy raglan. Like I mentioned, I hope to be working on the body of this a lot more. It's so simple because I'm just doing stockinette in the round. So hopefully this will be my like go-to project for something really easy if I'm watching TV or something like that. I just checked the thermostat that's behind me up here, and it says it's currently 81 degrees in my house right now. So I am really sweating in my wool vest, even though it's a vest. It does not matter. I am still sweating. It's probably because my hair is down, but oh well, whatever it takes for the sake of filming a knitting YouTube video, I guess. And speaking of being really hot, I actually have my next whip to be my last summer knit of the year. And so I found that last year, my first year of knitting, I was working on summer stuff like too late into the season. I was really itching to get to sweaters and cardigans. And I started to feel that itch like really early this year, like mid-July. And so I started working on some sweaters. You'll see a few later that I've either started or plan to start. And so, as this is going to be my last summer piece, it's been honestly put on hold on the back of my mind. I'm not like itching to work on it as much. But I am excited to get it finished because then that means I can fully transition over to working on wool sweaters and cardigans for the year. So this is the Agave top by Yumiko Alexander. She is a knitwear designer based in Santa Fe, which is really close to where I live. So it's really cool working on a pattern made by a local to me designer. And I've actually previously made one of her other patterns, the Reflections tee, that I gifted to my mom. But I saw a picture of this pattern and really loved it. And I think I found the perfect yarn that I've had in my stash since the winter that I wanted to use for it. So it's this beautiful, the yarn is this beautiful blue yarn that has a little bit of almost like a fluff or a mohair to it. And that fluff from that mohair lightens it up a little bit. So it looks almost marbled, like a blue with some white or some cream in it. But it's so pretty in this lace pattern. This is actually the back. I'll show the front because that is where the biggest lace chart at the very bottom of the t-shirt is. So this project is worked actually from the bottom up. It's supposed to even be worked in two panels, but I modified it so that I could knit it in the round and avoid some purling. And you do this pretty lacework pattern just on the front that whenever I block it, it will have a little like scalloped edge on the bottom, but the lace goes up the side, so it'll actually sit like off to the side of the shirt. And there are some options for adding either like a flutter sleeve with more of the lacework design, or you could just bind off or do an I-cord edge like around the sleeve hole. I'm not quite sure actually what I'm going to do because I only have this much yarn left, which will be, I believe, perfectly fine for finishing up the body. But I just want to see at the end how much I have, if I can add the flutter sleeve or not, because I think it's really pretty with the lace work on the bottom of the sleeve. But yeah, as I mentioned, this is knit in the round from the bottom up. I'm at the point where I have actually split now for a front and a back panel. So I'm working one of the sides right now and I'll finish that and add this like rib that's right at the neckline. And then I'll bind off there, go back and start on the other side and do an exact mirror. You seam the shoulders to whatever width you like. So I'll have to try it on when I get to that point and see what I plan on doing. But after that, that's when I'll assess how much yarn I have left and see if I'm going to add the sleeves from there or not. This pattern is with a worsted weight yarn. The gauge is 15.5 stitches and 23 rows, and this is knit on 5.5 millimeter needles. So you knit it on a bigger needle than typically recommended for that weight of yarn so that you get a little bit of a see-through effect. And I think the lace work stands out a little bit more when you do it that way. The yarn that I am using, like I mentioned, is this really pretty blue aqua yarn, and it is called Riley by Haiku. I've knit with their yarn before, and it's really nice to work with, and the colors are so vibrant and fun. I think it's like really fun to do a summer knit in one of their yarns. But the Riley yarn that I'm using is 50% baby alpaca, 25% mulberry silk, and 25% linen. So it has three different yarns in here. And yes, it is alpaca, so it'll be a little bit warmer. But I think the addition of the two other fibers in here make it like a little bit softer and almost a little bit shinier. So it makes for a really pretty summer yarn. The lacework charts on here are extremely easy to follow. You can really start to pick up on the pattern even as you keep going. So I'm working on my fourth one of this smaller one right here, and by now I can pretty much do it without looking at the lace chart. And it's not too hard to do, even if you do chose to do it in panels rather than in the round. The instructions are very clear for how to read the lacework chart, whether you're doing a knit row or a purl row. So I'm having no troubles with this at all. Hopefully I can pick this up sometime soon and start to fly through this so that I can have this as a finished object and get to wear it sometime soon. I feel like I'm usually a little over optimistic with all of my knits, and I say I'm excited to be working on everything. But I promise that this next one I'm actually extremely excited to be working on. I'm a relatively new knitter. I think it's been about a year and a half now since I've started knitting, and I've applied for a few test knits, but I don't typically get picked, which is totally fine. I don't expect to because of my experience, and I don't have a huge presence on social media at all. I just love to knit and to make things. But I still apply because if I see a piece that I'm really obsessed with, I would love to test knit. I used to test knit a lot when I crocheted. I crocheted for I think 5 years before I started knitting. And in that time, I loved doing test knits and I loved working with the designers and giving them feedback and getting to like pick your colors and make it your own after seeing just the designer's photos. And I think it's such a fun process. And every one of the at least crochet designers I used to work with was a small business. And so it just feels nice to support other creators in their designs. I've always wanted to do one for knitting, and I finally got selected to work on one. I saw that Rebecca from CreaBea posted on her Instagram story that she was working on a full zip jacket pattern, and she made it in this beautiful burnt orange color. And as soon as I saw it, I knew that I was going to be planning to make that jacket someday. So I applied for the test call and I actually got picked this time. So she's calling it Struan, and I believe it's a Scottish word. Unsure whether or not it's a jacket or a cardigan, so I'm just going to be calling it a jacket from here on out because, like I mentioned, it does have a full zipper on the front and it has a small collar at the top. But besides that, it's like a raglan constructed cardigan. So here is my progress so far. I've casted on the collar at the top, done my short rows, of course, as I do love short rows. I think they make a huge difference. So I'm glad that she included short rows in this pattern. But I did that, and then you start knitting the raglan increases for the yoke of the cardigan. You do your raglan increases until you get to the bottom of the armhole here, and then you split for sleeves. And now I'm just working flat back and forth over the body. I have about 20 centimeters. I just measured, and I think I need around 28 or 30. So I have about 8 more to go before a little bit of ribbing. It's actually quite thick at the bottom of ribbing. From there, I'm going to go back and add the collar on here and then work the sleeves. And then it comes the challenge of adding in the zipper. I've never added in a zipper to a piece of knit before. I attempted to do it on a vest that I knit recently, but I accidentally bought zippers that were closed at the bottom, so it wouldn't work for a jacket, which is great to know for this test knit to not buy a zipper like that again. I haven't actually even bought the zipper, so I will be super cautious about what I'm buying. There's been some recommendations in the testnet chat, so I'm probably going to go back and read those and see what everybody is suggesting there. But I have not actually read through the details of how to add on the zipper, so I can't speak to it, but hopefully I can shortly. But I think this is just going to be such a nice, I'm imagining it for like fall and winter, like a throw on jacket if I'm going camping or hiking or just spending some time outdoors. Since I got accepted for this test knit, I didn't have any yarn in my stash that I could use for this already. So I treated myself to a type of yarn that I've been wanting to try for a while, and it is Scout by Kelborn Woolens. And I got this in the color Juniper Heather. It's a really, really pretty, like emerald green, slightly heathered with almost like a teal and maybe a little bit of a lighter green. It's very subtle, but seeing it knit up, I can see the slight variation in the garment itself. So I think it's going to look quite beautiful again whenever you can step out in the sun and see it. But back to Scout, it's a 100% wool yarn. You get about 274 yards per 100 grams. And they call this a light yarn, but it worked to hit the DK gauge that I needed in order to knit this jacket. So it's perfect. I'm just holding it by itself, which I only have the slightest bit of a worry about that because I'm worried that it's going to stretch a lot whenever it's blocked because I'm not holding it with a mohair. We're gonna have to see how that goes. I'm hopeful, fingers crossed, it's gonna be okay. I'm gonna block it before I add in the zipper, so I'll get like a sneak peek before it's fully finished to see what it looks like. So I can always adjust and go back and make modifications if needed. The testnet deadline is not until I think like September 15th or something around there. So I have a lot of time ahead of me, which is great. I think I have about a month and a half now. So I have no worries about completing this on time because I've actually spent most of last week knitting on this because I wanted to get through the ball of yarn I was currently working on so I can go and do more fun things like the collar and the sleeves. I typically am the type of person when knitting sweaters or cardigans to do the whole yoke, split for sleeves, and then work down the body just enough that I can finish whatever ball of yarn or yarns that I'm currently using. And then I go back and do the collar if needed, and then the sleeves again if needed. And then I'll move back to the body, and I usually finish at the body. That's kind of my way of like tricking myself into being motivated to work on a knit piece. I find if I have to do like the whole body before I can do anything else, I get a little sick of it. I don't know if I mentioned, but this is knit on 4 millimeters, which I feel like is a very standard needle size for knitting sweaters and cardigans. It feels really small to me, but looking back, it's probably because my Roomy raglan's on 6.5 millimeters and my agave top is on 5.5 millimeters. So 4.4 millimeters feels really small to me at the moment when it's not even that small. It's like a very average needle size. But this is like, it's becoming a very good project for getting me back into the swing of like normal sweater knitting. I have a bit of a random whip to talk about right now, and it's actually a crochet project, which I haven't worked on a crochet project since I believe I crocheted something as a Christmas gift this past year. So it's been a minute. I love going back to my roots and crocheting. It's funny how easily it comes back to me, even though it has been about 7 or 8 months since I've crocheted something. And I've been in the market for a straw cowboy hat for a while now. I've actually had one for a few years, but I was at the beach recently, a few weeks ago, and we were out in the water, and the waves were pretty strong, stronger than what we thought they were going to be. And so I was wearing my hat because I didn't think anything of it. I was only intending to go up to my knees, but we ended up like going out a little bit further and the waves were like crashing down on us and I was holding onto my hat, making sure it didn't float away. But in the process, it got pretty misshapen now. It's like bent to the side, and there's even like 2 holes in the straw of it now. So I'm definitely in the market for a replacement for that hat, which I love. I've actually looked for a crochet version of this before, but never was able to find anything. But I was scrolling on Instagram recently and saw this beautiful crochet cowboy hat pattern that recently got released, which was released by Salty Goods on Etsy. And the pattern is called the Coastal Cowboy Hat, which is a beautiful hat pattern. And this is my progress so far. So I've worked the top and the sides of the top, and I'm now at the point where I need to go get my steamer and like shape the top of the hat so that it looks like how a cowboy hat would look. And then I can go on and work the brim, and I think I'll have to go back and shape that as well. So there's a bit of like shaping to do with this that you need a steamer for. I'm using the Wool and the Gang raffia, which I've used before to crochet a cute little like straw handbag, and it's working up really nicely into the hat. My gauge, though, I will say, is a lot tighter than what the designer specifies in her pattern. But in the way that she writes it, she gives you measurements that you're supposed to hit after a certain amount of rounds. And I found it so easy to just knit the extra rounds required in order to meet the measurements that I need. So mine does look a lot smaller and a lot tighter than her photos, but I really think it's going to turn out fine because, like I said, I am hitting the overall measurements and the stitch count isn't necessary to get exact, which I do love that about crocheting, is that there is always a little bit of wiggle room that you don't necessarily have in knitting. Yeah, this is where I'm at. Hopefully I get a lot more of this done once I do the shaping, and I'm excited to see how this turns out. All right, so those are all of my whips, and now I'm going to move into projects that I definitely have plans to work on in the future, and I have 2 to talk about today. My first one is a Christmas gift that's going to go to my dad. So, for some reason, Dad, if you're watching, please turn it off now so you don't get spoiled. But I'm going to be knitting him the men's light zipper pullover, I believe it's called, from Petite Knit. This pattern is a little bit of like a drop shoulder construction sweater with this really cool like quarter zip detail in the front and a little bit of a longer collar, which we'll see if I actually knit it that long because I'm not sure how my dad's going to feel about having a collar that can be quite tall and potentially itchy around his neck. But regardless, this sweater is really pretty. I think even though it looks a little bit basic, hopefully he gets a lot of wear out of it. My parents are based back on the East Coast, so it's definitely a lot colder where they live. And so I think he's going to find a lot of opportunities to wear this. I'm planning to knit this pullover with 2 yarns. And so these are the browns that I'm going to be working with. One is the soft silk mohair from Knitting for Olive, and the other is their merino, also from Knitting for Olive. I'll put the color names for both of these in the caption below. I think one is chocolate and one is brown bear, but I'll double check on that. You also knit this sweater on 4mm needles, which is why I was talking about it in my Struan test knit, because I think I'm going to be working on 4mm needles a lot. Here is the gauge that I've actually already worked up because I wanted to see how these 2 yarns were going to be turning out. I'll zoom in so you can see, but it has the slightest bit of like a marling effect because these two browns are a little bit different. This one's definitely warmer toned and this one's definitely cooler toned. But together they make a really pretty marled looking brown color, which is what I was going for. I wanted to do something a little bit more interesting than just a mohair that exactly matches the merino wool that I wanted to use for this pattern. So I've actually not started this yet. I really wanted to the other day, but you need two 3.25mm needles in order to start at the top of the collar. And I only have one set of Likey bamboo needles that I use. I don't have any other needles. I think I'm gonna have to go and pick up another 3.25mm, probably already like attached needle and cord so that I can start working on this, because you do an interesting sort of cast on where you cast on the 2 needles at the same time. And then I think you're going to work one needle at a time down and then either sew them together or knit them together so that you get a double folded collar this way. I've only briefly looked at the pattern, so I can't say for sure that that's what happens, but I do know I need two of the same needle size in order to start this. So this one is currently waiting for 3.25mm needles, and I also need cords either from my agave top or my Roomy raglan because I only have like the really short ones, and I don't think that's going to work for the amount of stitches that I read that I need to pick up to start this pullover. It's very early to be working on Christmas presents, but I want to get working on that one soon so that I don't feel rushed by the time that it comes around that I really need to be finishing my Christmas presents, and I want to have time to work on Christmas sweaters for myself since I don't make plans too far out, so I'm not quite sure what I'm going to get up to knitting at that time yet. My last confirmed plan for the future that we'll be talking about today is something that I saw, I believe, another creator talk about on YouTube when I was watching a video, but the Wales frame cardigan has occupied so many thoughts in my mind. These past few weeks, I'm actually obsessed with it. It is this beautiful, absolutely stunning cable cardigan, which I have really been itching to try out knitting cables on a garment. I've done cables for a knit beanie before, but I'd really love to try either a sweater or a cardigan. And I know the Dagmar is very popular, and I probably will knit that someday, but I did want to look for something a little bit different, something that maybe would be easier for the first time doing a cable pattern, since I've heard that the Dagmar can be a little bit tricky if you're new to cables, which I most certainly am. The Wales frame cardigan is obviously a cabled cardigan, like I've talked about. It has these really stunning details too, where within some of the like crossed cables, there is a little flower motif that might be considered a cable in and of itself. I am not about the pattern, so I don't know yet how to make the flower, but that little detail was what pushed me over the edge into liking this pattern. I think the ribbing on here is beautiful. The fit looks really good. I've looked at other people's Ravelry projects, and it always comes out looking really nicely on everybody. So I have high hopes for this pattern, and again, I probably overused the word excited, but I'm very, very excited to start this eventually someday. I was in North Carolina a few weeks ago, hence my beach story with my straw hat. And we were in the Outer Banks, and there was a local yarn store there that I was able to go visit. And I bought some yarn from there that I intend to use for the cardigan. It is this cool toned pink yarn from Quince & Co. It is their yarn called Finch, which is 100% American wool. And it is close to a fingering weight yarn, which is what the pattern calls for. It calls for a fingering weight held with a lace, so like a mohair or an alpaca fluff. I only have the wool right now. I believe I'm leaning towards getting the brushed alpaca silk from Drops, and they have a cool toned pink that I think will go nicely with this. So I'm probably going to be buying that soon because it's affordable, and I've heard really, really good things about that yarn. So I just want to see for myself how it is to knit with it. And I definitely think some sort of mohair in the cabled cardigan is going to be really nice, and it's going to keep it even warmer, even though this is a fingering weight yarn. The whole cardigan is knit at 3.5 millimeter needles, so I'm definitely a little bit scared about that. I think it's just gonna take longer than I could ever expect something like that to take. It's definitely my hardest project that I'll ever take on to date, too. So it's not necessarily my white whale. My white whale, in case you're curious, is the anemone sweater by Knitting for Olive, which is gorgeous, but it involves steeking. So to me, that's white whale material. But this pattern is very close to it, as I'm very intimidated by it, but I do feel confident in my abilities. And as long as I just take it slow and double check my work and don't feel in a rush to get it done, then I think it'll be okay. I can look up YouTube tutorials and I can ask for help. And if it just does not work out, then I can always frog back and use this yarn for something else because this yarn is really, really pretty. I'm a deep or a dark, I forget what it's called, but a deep or dark winter for my like colors that I should be using based on my hair and my skin tone. And I find pinks to be quite hard. I love like a hot pink or a berry recently. I think those look really good with my hair color. But I love a light pink, and I've seen some other creators that have similar coloring to me using light, cool toned pinks. So I've been in the hunt and I saw this, and I am worried it airs a little bit too warm. I'm afraid it's going to wash me out a little bit, but I think with at least my hair color, it looks quite nice. It's just whether or not um, I'm a little too pale that this will look too similar to my skin tone. Right now it doesn't, but it's the summer, so it'll be interesting what this looks like in the winter. I think regardless if it turns out the way it looks in the pictures, I'm probably not going to care what color it looks like because I think the cardigan is beautiful, and I've had a dream of making a cabled either sweater or cardigan in a light pink for a while now, and I'm really excited that I found the perfect pattern and the perfect yarn. It's so nice when my like visions and my dreams finally come to life and I get to actually work on the project. So that's all for my knitting content today. I did want to share some of my favorites recently so that we can get to know each other a little bit better too. And I watch a lot of TV because I do knit quite a lot. I'm not a fast knitter, but I do spend a lot of time knitting, hence how I'm able to produce so many garments in a year. But yeah, like I mentioned, I'm usually watching TV. So right now, I've been shamelessly really into Love Island. I watched the whole US season, which is actually my first time watching the US seasons live. I'm usually a Love Island UK person. I love Love Island UK. I've seen a lot of those seasons now. But watching the USA one was actually really fun. It was a very entertaining season to say the least, but I'm definitely enjoying the UK one a little bit more. I hate to say, but I really love a lot of the people on that season this year. And I think the format of the way that they do the show is really addicting to watch. And you can really see how they like are actually developing feelings either platonically or romantically for each other. So I've been really enjoying Love Island UK. I think it's ending quite soon if it hasn't already ended by the time that I end up posting this video. So by then we'll know who wins, but right now I have no idea who's going to win. And I'm excited to find out. I've also been watching House of the Dragon recently. I rewatched seasons 1 and 2 before the third season came out, so it's very fresh in my memory. And whenever I was at the beach with my family, I convinced my brother and my parents to watch the first season of Game of Thrones. So I'm very engrossed in that universe again. I've watched Game of Thrones through quite a few times by this point in my life. It's one of the shows that I just go back to and like I can rewatch it a bunch of times. And there's so much going on in Game of Thrones and so many subplots that I feel like you can watch it a lot of times and you pick up on new things each time you watch it or like new connections. And they even talk about House of the Dragon, either dragons or characters in Game of Thrones. So it's kind of cool to like see the backstory. I watched Night of the Seven Kingdoms in the winter too, and they brought up Sir Duncan in Game of Thrones season one, and I never even picked up on that before because it's just said in passing. So I like how all the series are becoming a little bit more connected, and they're just so good and so well written. House of the Dragon season three, like to me so far, feels a little bit slow, but I think it's going to start picking up. Episode 6 just came out last night, and I have not watched it yet. So hopefully I can watch that tonight and get caught up. And I love going on threads and reading about what everybody's thoughts are and what their theories are. I feel like I get really invested into like the online conversations around shows like Love Island. I do that as well too. And I just think it's interesting reading everybody's opinions and then going and watching it yourself and like forming your own opinions and seeing how it compares to other people. And there's just so many people that are so knowledgeable about Game of Thrones, like past facts and like history. I think it comes from people that are actually reading the books. And it's so cool to see all of the like behind the scenes information that's out there in the books that you don't get in the show. So I'm grateful whenever people are posting about that on threads because it gives me some background that I would never know if I was just watching the show. Also, this year, I'm trying to watch more movies. I know that sounds weird because I just mentioned I watch a lot of TV, but I truly do love TV, and sometimes I struggle to sit down and watch a full movie. I feel like there's so many classics out there that I've just never seen before. So I'm trying to like rewind and go back and watch movies that I ideally should have seen by now in my life, but I haven't. And so that does include a lot of animated movies. I I had previously never seen anything from Studio Ghibli, which I've learned now that that's absolutely crazy. I would have loved to have watched those in my childhood because they're so cute. But I texted one of my friends from high school and she gave me a list of her top five Studio Ghibli films to watch. So I'm working down the list right now. I've watched My Neighbor Totoro and I really liked it. I thought that was really cute. That's the only one I've watched in full now. I know I have so many more to watch. So if you have a recommendation for which Studio Ghibli film I should watch next, please leave me a comment down below. I would love to get some advice from people that have been in this universe since they've been children because I really like them and they're so relaxing to watch and knit to. So having a great time watching that. On the craftier side of things, I'm in about 2 weeks now, I think, taking my first sewing class. So I'm going to a local sewing studio and doing like a 2 hour long guided class. I had to book it over a month ago because they were booked out so far in advance. So I have really high hopes for how this class is going to turn out. I've been getting the itch to learn how to sew because it would be so cool to learn how to knit and crochet and then learn how to sew, which at that point you can basically hand make your whole wardrobe if you really wanted to. So I really hope I like sewing because that would be so much fun to like really start customizing and making all of my clothing pieces. If I like the class and if it goes well, I'll probably go back to another few classes to really understand what I'm doing and then maybe look into buying a sewing machine. So if anybody has any good recommendations for a sewing machine for like an absolute beginner, please let me know because I have no idea what's going on in the sewing space. I just think it's a really cool hobby and I would love to learn. So I hope it works out well at the class. Okay, I think that's all I have to talk about today. So if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching this video and this podcast. I'm hoping to start making videos a little bit more regularly now as I haven't posted since I think February. So hopefully there's more podcasts to come from me, and hopefully I can keep you all up to date with what I'm knitting on, as I've talked about a lot of projects today, and a lot of them are super exciting to me. So I'm excited to either get them going or get them finished and share them with everybody on here. If you'd like to follow me on Instagram or TikTok, you can look me up under Outdoor Knits. I have accounts on both of those platforms. I definitely post so much more regularly on TikTok though, with like the Whip Wednesdays and Finish Object Fridays. I think that's such a cute platform to share what knitters and crocheters are working on. So please follow me on there if you'd like. Otherwise, if you like this video on YouTube, please subscribe to me and like this video. And I can't wait to talk to you all next time about what I've been knitting.